The best initial exercise for each muscle of the body. Factors such as the daily rush and crowded gyms often force us to improvise our workout, choosing exercises that are available at the moment. However, thinking about optimizing muscle development, this practice is not ideal. Each muscle group responds differently to specific stimuli, and the sequence of exercises can maximize or compromise your results. And yes, contrary to popular belief, within each muscle group, there are exercises more suitable to start the workout and others that are more efficient if placed at the end. The correct choice of the initial exercise can enhance your entire workout, improving the neuromuscular connection and preparing the fibers for the intense work that will follow. So today you will see the best options for exercises to start training each muscle group of your body, optimizing your results and avoiding unnecessary injuries. Before we begin, please leave in the comments your name and the city from where you are watching our content. Best initial exercise for the chest. Machine fly. The machine fly is the ideal exercise to start chest training because it promotes adequate warm-up of the muscles and establishes a superior neuromuscular connection. When performing this movement, you completely isolate the pectoral without involving secondary muscles such as triceps and shoulders as much. This allows you to awaken the pectoral fibers before more intense compound movements, creating a controlled pre-fatigue that optimizes muscle activation in the following exercises. Many people choose to start chest training with the flat bench press, which, despite being a fundamental exercise in pectoral training, is not as good as an initial exercise as the fly. This is because the flat bench press, being a compound exercise, significantly recruits the triceps and shoulders. If these secondary muscles fatigue before the pectoral during the bench press, you will not be able to adequately stimulate your pectoral in the following exercises, compromising your entire workout. To correctly perform the machine fly, simply sit with your back fully supported against the backrest and adjust the seat height so that the handles are aligned with the middle of your chest. Hold the handles with slightly flexed elbows and open your arms until you feel a slight stretch in the pectoral. Then, bring the handles toward the center using the strength of your pectoral, not your arms. Maintain a controlled speed in the eccentric phase. The most common mistakes include using excessive weight and transferring tension to the shoulders, performing the movement too quickly reducing muscle tension, not completing the range of motion, and using body momentum to move the weight. Quadriceps, leg extension. The leg extension is the ideal exercise to start quadriceps training because it allows you to completely isolate this muscle group, establishing a superior neuromuscular connection before more complex movements. This exercise places the quadriceps in a position that favors maximum activation of all its portions, especially the vastus medialis and rectus femoris, preparing them for the compound exercises that will follow. Many people choose to start leg training with squats, thinking it's better to do the hardest at the beginning when we have more energy. Although squats are an absolutely fundamental exercise in quadriceps training, they are not as good as an initial exercise as the leg extension. This is because squats, being a compound movement, significantly recruit the glutes, hamstrings, and core, potentially diverting focus from the quadriceps. Additionally, starting with an intense compound exercise like squats without adequate warm-up and specific muscle activation increases the risk of injuries. That's why you see many athletes doing, besides the leg extension, exercises for hamstrings, calves, and adductors, with the aim of improving mobility before squatting. To correctly perform the leg extension, there aren't many secrets. Simply adjust the machine so that the ankle support is positioned just above the feet. Your knee should be aligned with the rotation axis of the machine. In the eccentric phase, control the return of the weight, not allowing the plates to touch between repetitions to maintain constant tension in the muscle. The most common mistakes include not completing the leg extension, excessively moving the hip during the exercise, and performing the movement very quickly. Shoulders. Seated lateral raise or cable lateral raise. The seated lateral raise or cable lateral raise is the ideal exercise to start shoulder training because it directly activates the lateral deltoid, the most important portion for giving width and definition to the shoulders. This movement establishes an excellent neuromuscular connection right at the beginning, perfectly isolating the target musculature without overloading the joints, preparing the shoulders for more intense and compound exercises. Many people start shoulder training with the overhead press with barbell or dumbbells. However, the overhead press, being a compound exercise, significantly recruits the anterior deltoid and triceps, distributing the tension and not providing the same degree of lateral deltoid activation as the raises. Additionally, the overhead press places greater stress on the shoulder joints when performed without proper warm-up. But why do the lateral raise seated and not standing like most people? Simply because when seated, it's harder for you to compensate using body swing or the trapezius. This is the exercise that people most often cheat on, so we need to neutralize that. To correctly perform the seated lateral raise, sit at the edge of a bench with your back straight and hold a dumbbell in each hand at your sides, with a slight bend in your elbows. Maintaining this slight bend throughout the movement, raise your arms laterally until your elbows are approximately at shoulder height. Focus on raising using the strength of your deltoids, not your trapezius, keeping your shoulders low and away from your ears throughout the exercise. And why on the cable? Because the tension is constant. To perform it, position yourself next to the machine with the low pulley, holding the cable with the hand opposite to the machine side. Maintain a slight tilt of your torso to the side opposite of the pulley and raise your arm laterally, maintaining the same slight elbow bend described previously. The most common mistakes include using body momentum to raise the weights, raising the arms above the shoulder line, using excessive weights that compromise technique, and raising the shoulders toward the ears during the movement. On the cable, it's important to avoid excessive trunk rotation, which diverts focus from the lateral deltoid. You'll know you're performing correctly when you feel an intense and localized contraction in the lateral part of the shoulder without excessive involvement of the trapezius. Back. Lat pull-down. The lat pull-down is the perfect choice to start back training because it efficiently activates the latissimus dorsi while establishing the mind-muscle connection essential for the following exercises. This movement allows you to work with a complete range of motion in a controlled manner, preparing the back muscles for more complex exercises, such as rows and pull-ups. Many people start back training with the pull-up, which, despite being extremely effective, is not ideal as an initial exercise. This is because the pull-up requires considerable strength, and if performed without adequate warm-up, can overload the biceps and forearms before properly activating the back. To correctly perform the lat pull-down, sit on the machine with your knees firmly secured under the supports and keep your back straight. Hold the bar with your hands in a grip slightly wider than shoulder width. Lean your torso slightly backward to allow a more natural pull line. Start the movement by pulling with your elbows, bringing the bar toward your collarbone or upper chest. Focus on contracting your shoulder blades downward and inward, feeling your back muscles working. In the eccentric phase, allow the bar to rise in a controlled manner, completely stretching the back muscles. The most common mistakes include using body momentum to pull the bar, not completing the range of motion, pulling with your arms instead of your back, and leaving your shoulders elevated during the exercise. It's also important to avoid leaning excessively backward, which can transfer tension to the lower back muscles. You'll know you're performing correctly when you feel an intense contraction in the upper back at the maximum point of the pull and a comfortable stretch when your arms are extended. The correct sensation is of opening your back like wings during contraction. If your forearms or biceps are fatiguing before your back, you're probably pulling predominantly with your arms instead of engaging the back muscles. Triceps, cable rope extension, or triceps kickback. Starting triceps training with the rope extension on the cable or the kickback is ideal because these exercises perfectly isolate the triceps, allowing you to establish an effective neuromuscular connection before more complex movements. Both exercises place the triceps in an elongated position at the beginning of the movement, which generates a more efficient and complete contraction, maximizing muscle development. Many people choose to start triceps training with the famous bench dips, which, despite being a very efficient exercise, is not as good as an initial exercise as the rope or kickback. This is because these compound exercises significantly recruit the chest and shoulders, potentially diverting focus from the triceps and compromising the mind-muscle connection necessary at the beginning of the workout. To correctly perform the rope extension on the cable, position yourself in front of the machine with your feet shoulder-width apart and hold the rope with your palms facing each other. Keep your elbows close to your body throughout the movement. This is a crucial point. Start with your elbows flexed at approximately 90 degrees and extend your forearms downward, strongly contracting the triceps at the end of the movement. In the final phase, slightly separate your hands outward to intensify the contraction of the lateral head of the triceps. For the kickback, support one hand and one knee on a bench, keeping your spine neutral and parallel to the floor. With your free arm, hold a dumbbell with your elbow flexed and aligned with your torso. Completely extend your forearm backward, contracting the triceps, and slowly return to the starting position. The most common mistakes include moving your elbows, which should remain stable, using body momentum, not completing the forearm extension, and using excessive weight. In the kickback, it's important to avoid trunk rotation and maintain focus on the isolated extension of the forearm. Biceps. Concentration curl or incline bench curl. The concentration curl or the incline bench curl allows perfect isolation of the target muscle, establishing a superior neuromuscular connection right at the beginning of the workout. Both place the biceps in a position of maximum stretch at the beginning of the movement, which results in greater activation of muscle fibers and a more intense stimulus for hypertrophy. Many people start biceps training with the straight barbell curl, which, despite being a classic and efficient exercise, is not as good as an initial exercise as the suggested options. This is because the barbell curl distributes tension between both arms simultaneously, allowing compensations and imbalances, and does not provide the same degree of isolation and stretching as the concentration curl or incline curl. To correctly perform the concentration curl, sit at the edge of a bench with your legs open and support the arm that will work on the inside of your thigh, with your elbow extended beyond your knee. Hold the dumbbell with your palm facing outward and flex your forearm, bringing the weight toward your shoulder in a controlled movement. Keep your elbow fixed throughout the movement and focus on the biceps contraction at the maximum point of flexion. For the incline bench curl, adjust a bench at approximately 45 to 60 degrees of inclination. Sit with your back fully supported and let your arms hang at your sides, holding the dumbbells with your palms facing forward. From this stretched position, flex your forearms, bringing the dumbbells toward your shoulders, strongly contracting the biceps at the top of the movement. The most common mistakes include using body momentum to move the weight, not completing the range of motion, moving your elbows, which should remain fixed, and using excessive weight that compromises technique. In the incline curl, it's also important to avoid raising your shoulders during the movement. Before we continue to the next exercise, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Having constant access to correct and science-based information is what will make you progress in the long term in the world of bodybuilding. Hamstrings. Lying leg curl. The lying leg curl allows perfect isolation of this frequently neglected muscle group. This movement places the hamstrings in a stretched position at the beginning, which generates a more efficient and complete contraction, fundamental for the balanced development of the legs. Many people start hamstring training with the stiff-legged deadlift, which, despite being an efficient exercise, is not as good as an initial exercise as the lying leg curl. This is because the stiff-legged deadlift, being a compound movement, significantly recruits the lower back and glutes, potentially diverting focus from the hamstrings. Additionally, it requires more technique and places greater load on the spine, increasing the risk of injuries if performed without proper warm-up and specific muscle activation. To correctly perform the lying leg curl, lie face down on the machine with your knees aligned with the edge of the support and the ankle support positioned just above your heels. Hold the side handles for stabilization and flex your legs, bringing your heels toward your glutes in a controlled movement. Strongly contract the hamstrings at the maximum point of flexion and slowly return to the starting position, without allowing the plates to touch between repetitions to maintain constant tension in the muscle. The most common mistakes include raising your hips from the machine during the movement, using momentum to flex your legs, not completing the range of motion, and using excessive weight that compromises technique. It's important to keep your hips firmly pressed against the support throughout the exercise to correctly isolate the hamstrings. You'll know you're performing correctly when you feel an intense and localized contraction in the back of the thigh, from the insertion near the glute to the region behind the knee. The The correct sensation is of shortening and increasing tension in the hamstrings during the maximum contraction phase. If your lower back is being heavily solicited, or you feel discomfort in the region, review your positioning on the machine and make sure your hips are stable throughout the movement. Calves, seated calf raise. The seated calf raise exercise is ideal to start calf training because it places the gastrocnemius muscle in an optimal pre-stretch position, allowing a more complete and efficient contraction. This exercise perfectly isolates the calves, in addition to reducing the participation of other muscle groups in the movement. Many people start calf training with the standing calf raise. In the standing exercise, there is a natural tendency to compensate the movement using body momentum and the natural elasticity of the tendon, reducing the effective tension in the muscle. Additionally, standing work allows the use of very high loads that can compromise technique and increase the risk of injuries when performed without proper warm-up. To correctly perform the seated calf raise, adjust the machine so that your knees are flexed at approximately 90 degrees, with the pads comfortably positioned over your knees. Position the tips of your feet on the platform, keeping your heels off the support. Raise your heels as much as possible, strongly contracting your calves at the top of the movement. Maintain the contraction for 1 second and then descend in a controlled manner until you feel a complete stretch in your calves without allowing the plates to touch between repetitions. The most common mistakes include not completing the range of motion, using excessive weights that compromise technique, moving your knees during the exercise, and performing the movement very quickly. It's also important to avoid lifting your knees from the pad, which reduces the efficiency of the exercise. You'll know you're performing correctly when you feel an intense and localized contraction in the back of your calf during the elevation, followed by a comfortable stretch when your heels descend below the level of the platform. Glutes, hip abduction machine or glute bridge. The hip abduction machine or the glute bridge are perfect exercises to start training this musculature because they allow a specific and controlled activation of the fibers of the gluteus maximus and medius. Both exercises efficiently isolate the glutes without excessively overloading the quadriceps and lower back, preparing them for more intense and compound exercises. Many people start glute training with squats with a greater amplitude to focus on the glutes, which, despite being a great movement, is not as good as an initial exercise as the suggested options. This is because squats, being a compound movement, distribute tension between quadriceps, glutes, and core, not providing the same specific activation of the glutes as the hip abduction machine or the bridge. Additionally, many practitioners have difficulty feeling the glutes working properly during squats. To correctly perform the hip abduction on the machine, position yourself sideways on the machine with your lower leg flexed for stability and your upper leg straight and supported on the roller. Keep your torso aligned and abdomen contracted. Raise your leg upward, feeling the contraction in the gluteus medius, and return in a controlled manner to the starting position without allowing the leg to touch the other between repetitions. For the glute bridge, lie on your back with your knees bent and feet flat on the floor, at hip distance. Position your arms at your sides with palms down. Contract your abdomen and raise your hips, forming a straight line from your shoulders to your knees. Focus on pressing your heels against the floor and strongly contracting your glutes at the top of the movement. Return in a controlled manner until almost touching the floor and repeat. Thank you for watching this far, and may God bless you, my friend.